We are studying from Tes. We are in item 12 in chapter 6. First we'll read preparation excerpt from Rav's words. I hear the voice of Rabash, and I know his flow in the lesson. That is how I am with the lesson, with his questions and his answers, completely adhered to him. Again, I hear the voice of Rabash, and I know his flow in the lesson. That is how I am with the lesson, with his questions and his answers, completely adhered to him. Before we study with Rabash, we'll read item 12. Item 12, headline, when Keter emerged, he only had Nefesh, and that phase 2 did not remain in him, for she departed to the emanator. Item 12. Thus, when Keter comes, being the last of all of them, he emerged only as Nefesh. This is the meaning of the verse. The Lord has sworn by his soul. Even this phase of Nefesh of Keter did not remain in the world of Akudim, for it was once more concealed and remained adhered to her place in her emanator.
Meaning, I don't have to say that if I am talking of 1 degree, then the hands they do the same action as the legs, and the ear performs the same action as the eye. Each one has his own role. So he's saying, yes, it's correct, they have 1 degree, but each one perform their roles completely. Nefesh does everything. Naran Chai. Ruach is missing. We have to remember here that we have 4 stages here, meaning there's one stage called Ta'amim, tastes. The order is this way. When we begin to speak of the dots, the kudot, there's already a different order. Meaning, he says that thanks to the dots, there's another screen, lighter than phase 3, the phase of Zeranpin, but new vessels were added in each and every one, to such an extent that he says now that the coupling that took place on Zeranpin, then Zeranpin was before that Chaya of Ruach, he has Nefesh, he has Yechida of Ruach, and the Neshama had before that, from the point of view of tastes, it had Neshama of Neshama, now it has Chaya of Neshama. And the light of Chokhmah had before Ruach of Chaya, now it has Neshama of Chaya. And Keter had Yechida. And understand. Why? What about phase 4? It doesn't have the light of Yechida on its degree. The light of Yechida has departed. And we study more, since the new light that comes fills the empty vessels that remain there, the vessels that came out after Malchut. That's considered the degree of Keter, but they are Malchut of phase 4. And the light that shines now, phase 3, is finer. It's hard to understand it. He says Malchut does not receive from Zeranpin except for surrounding light, since a degree that's higher than it is called surrounding. 2 degrees higher, 2 surroundings. He makes a rule. Every higher degree relative to a lower degree is called surrounding. What's so hard for me to understand? I'll tell you. On the one hand, we say that Ta'amin, taste, is called the degree of Keter, and this entire degree is more important. Now, when we learn that there was coupling done on phase 3, that the Anpin attained the quality of Yechida over its light of Ruach, we say Malchut, that received beforehand the light of Nefesh, even though the coupling was on the degree of Keter, it cannot receive from Ruach anything but the quality of surrounding. And you know that the lower degree in the upper one is greater than the uppermost degree in the lower one. How can I say here that Malchut receives from Zeranpin from the degree of Chokhmah? Again, Malchut from the degree of Keter receives now from Zeranpin, from the level of Chaya, a surrounding that will be higher relative to her. It's hard to understand.
I didn't understand the question.
We have to interpret. It's called coarseness. When a coupling is done on 1 degree, 1 coarseness, then they're all the degree of Keter. And I can elaborate further and say that what came out of direct light before reflected light equalized it for everyone, that gave each and every one 10 Sefirot. But in the direct light, there is no change. And as much as the light went through vessels, so more discernments appear in it. This is not for reflected light, even though it's only 1 coarseness, 1 degree. Everybody has 10 Sefirot. But there's a difference between the two. What's the difference? How many vessels the light has, so we make a similar number of discernments in the light. And that has nothing to do with coarseness. That's why I can call it change. In coarseness, there's no change, since everyone has 10 Sefirot. The degree of Keter, each one needs the other, or not for Zat, that where one needs the other. It was added additional vessels so you can receive more direct light. From the point of view of length, you can interpret what comes from above down. Direct light, it's called length. From the side of the light, we learned as many vessels as you have there, so the light is bigger. The vessels, give discernments in the lights, as much as they can be impressed in the vessel from the light. There's no more than that. And what we said later, that their degrees became equalized, that's from the thickness. What from the thickness of the screen, that a coupling came out by which reflected light comes out, and it completed in each and every one the 10 Sefirot. And without a direct light, it makes no change. It doesn't add any vessels on the length, meaning the coarseness, from the 4 phases of direct light that comes from above down. You find that the length, I will interpret what comes from above down, truly from the upper one to the lower one. It's revealed. Everyone comes to the Keter, and later they expand down below. This is called length. thickness means that this is the coarseness in the screen where the coupling and striking takes place. From that you get reflected light. And reflected light completes the 10 Sefirot for each and every one. You find from the side of their degrees equal on the force of thickness, but not from the point of view of length. In the light there's no change. The reflected light did not attain any vessels in the direct light. I made an allegory on that, and Jacob carried his legs. You interpret, after the Creator promised him, I heard you everywhere you go, all the promises, he became light in his feet, meaning that the legs heard it? No, it's 1 degree. If there's a great degree on that level, then everyone on that are in a great level. But the hands remain hands, the legs remain legs, the ears, eyes. There are 2 things. From the point of view of the direct light, there's no change. The change takes place in the reflected light because of the coarseness. 12. Thus, when Keter comes, being the last of all of them, from the side of the direct light, he emerged only as Nefesh. This is the meaning of the verse, the Lord has sworn by his soul, that we interpreted. Even this phase of Nefesh of Keter did not remain in the world of Akudim, for it was once more concealed and remained adhered to her place in her emanator. And it was not revealed again at all, ever, since this quality was revealed only on coarseness, level 4 of coarseness, and this will not happen again. And here it's a little difficult. According to the order that he gives us on the 4 phases of direct light, you have the following order, right? But all the couplings are on phase 4. In that case, all the phases have to be the same order, not necessarily on the coarseness of phase 4. Even coarseness of root level has to be the same thing. If you say that the light comes to Malchut, how the 10 Sefirot pass? You have to have this order. Therefore, we need additional clarification here. Of Ab, when Galgalta has a coarseness of the phase 4 on the degree of Keter, then he says that you get Yechida of Nefesh. Now, let's say in the Partzuf of Ab, you also have Keter of Chochmah. It's also Yechida. But this is Yechida of the degree of Chochmah, not Yechida of Keter. When he says Bina, it also has to be the Yechida, same order. But what kind of Yechida is it? Keter of Neshama, or Keter of Partzuf Chochmah in Ab, or Keter of Keter in Partzuf Galgalta. In that case, what we say is that Yechida of Nefesh is specifically in the Partzuf of Galgalta, where there was the degree of Keter, meaning the Malchut that continued, that drew after the restriction all the light. And they say that it made a screen and received what it received, and we refer to this as the height of the degree, called Keter of Keter. Whereas from that point below, there are also 5 phases that begin from Keter, but it comes in Keter of Chochmah, and in Sag, the degree of Keter of Bina, and in Ma, the degree of Keter of Zeranpin, and in Bon, Keter of Malchut. If we ask, how do we learn that this is the order of the coarseness of Keter, since Malchut still did not receive anything? But we speak below the upper one, meaning after the reflected light came out. Since then, you can seemingly see what's in the degree. And we see that, again, that there is this order. There's a question. How can we speak of anything before it comes into Malchut, before reflected light? Before reflected light, who receives them? Since the upper 9, the first 9, are called the light without a kli. Only after the Malchut is revealed, before Malchut receives all those phases, receive in order to receive, now it receives them in order to bestow. Then it now sees the order that we have. That's how we need to say it. Where are we now?
Item 300 below.
We have to study 300 below. Of Nefesh of Keter, 300. That is because the level of Keter is drawn only through phase 4, called Keter of Keter, as we explained before. Phase 4 was no longer renewed in a coupling by striking, after having been refined in the departure of the first expansion of Akudim, called Tamin, tastes. Since phase 4 did not leave a record behind her, as the Ari said. Hence, that great light disappeared from all the Partsufim and the world from here on. In that case, what we asked before, since in each phase you have to have that order, it's correct, that order, but on which level, which degree? Keter of Chokhmah or of Bina, not Keter of Keter. You find that when he says here Nefesh of Yechidah, it's actually of the light of Keter of Yechidah, seemingly. And in Ab, it's going to be Yechidah of Chokhmah, and in Sag, Yechidah of Bina, and in Ma, Yechidah of Zaranpin, and in Bon, Yechidah of Malchut. So we finished now, and we have to start item 13. Indeed, when the Keter comes, Malchut is complete with all 5 inner lights, which are Naran Chai. Now, all the Sefirot were still deficient, for they emerged deficient and incomplete. And this was indeed intentional. What does it mean, what it says here? In page 245 in the Hebrew edition, item 1, he says the following. Look again. Let us explain the emergence of these lights called Akudim. Know that when they emerged, they did not emerge complete. The reason for it is that the intention of the emanator was to now make the beginning of the Havaya, of the Havayot, the plural of Havaya, of the vessels, to clothe the light for the receivers so they could receive. Thus, since they emerged incomplete and unfinished, they returned to their root above to be corrected and completed, and thus a vessel was made. That's why he now says in item 13 that this was indeed intentional. correct and make a vessel. And this is why they had to return and rise to the emanator to receive their completion from him. By that, a vessel was made. How by that a vessel was made? He doesn't interpret that. He doesn't explain, but he says it. Now, 14. Going back, Keter returned before all of them. When it begins to depart, phase 4 is refined, then the light of Keter departed completely. It follows that he departed last and entered first. Departed first. Malchut is the opposite. She left first. Before comes the light of Nefesh in the vessel of Keter, and in the end comes the light of Keter in the vessel of Keter. You find that during the departure, who departed first? Keter departed last and came to get a fulfillment in its root first. Whereas Malchut was the opposite. It departed it departed first and entered last. Soon. This is the meaning of the verse, I am the first and I am the last. The explanation of this verse, I am the first, I am last, is correct both in the Sefirah of Keter, called first, and in the Sefirah of Malchut, that is called first. Though one is the opposite of the other. It is known that I, is an appellation for Malchut. And its opposite, Ayin, the absence, is an appellation for Keter. You find that I am first from the Keter that entered first. I am last. I departed last. Malchut, I am last. She departed last. I am first, that she left first. This is the opposite. In that case, what did we learn here? What was the order like? Now, what does it mean when he says that Malchut? What does he mean when he says Keter? According to the simple explanation that we learned in one degree, in one coupling, there was the order of the departure. Who departs first? The first degree. Meaning the greatest, the biggest. In corporeality, when a person begins to grow weaker, he loses his greatest power, then he becomes lighter, and in the end also the smallest force. And when the baby is born with a small force, and when it grows, he acquires each time a greater force. In corporeality, it's the same thing. Let's see what it says in item 400.
Keter returned before all of them. 400. This has already been explained above. It is because in the first refinement from phase 4 of coarseness to phase 3 of coarseness, the level of Keter instantly disappears from the Guf. We should remember that in the Rosh there is no departure, only in the Guf. So what are we referring to the departure? Only to the Guf. It is so because the coupling by striking that occurs on phase 3 elicits only 10 Sefirot at the level of Chokhmah. It turns out that the light of Keter disappears to its origin. 1. Malchut is the opposite, for she disappeared only after the screen had been refined from all its coarseness and equalized its form with the emanator. Then the light of Malchut disappears. We'll soon see what's difficult here. If we explain that over the fourth phase, light emerged, the degree, and the whole degree departed. What does it mean that the Keter departed? From Keter to the Malchut, all of the level of flavors, Ta'amim, departed. Why is it called Keter? Next. And what do we call Malchut? The coarseness of the root phase, the degree of Malchut. She entered first. Here we learn the opposite, that the Partzufim go from above downwards. We've learned first comes the degree of Keter, and finally comes the degree of Malchut. If so, what does it mean that Malchut emerged, went out, and entered at last? She entered at last and came out first. One and the same. Look at what he interprets. You understood the question or not? He starts clarifying above. Item 15. When Keter disappeared to his origin, when fourth phase was refined, he doesn't have the degree of Keter anymore. Again, what Keter was here? We've learned the light of Yechidah that was clothed in the Kli of Keter was the light of Nefesh of Yechidah. Turns out Nefesh of Yechidah departed. What's left? We should say below that. Comes and says this. Chochmah rose to the place of Keter. Bina to the place of Chochmah. And all of them similarly. In the end, Malchut was in the place of Yesod. And by this ascent to the place of Yesod, meaning that Malchut would refine to the level of 3, light was added in her, in the Yesod. And she had one surrounding light opposite the inner phase of Chaya.
Me.
Who?
No.
Malchut. Light awakens in Malchut, so in Malchut now she received the surrounding of Chaya from who? From the coupling made in the vessel of Yesod. We explained yesterday, since in Zeranpin, in terms of direct light, there's a purer degree in terms of direct light rather than in relation to Malchut. The coupling that was done over the vessel of Yesod is the light of Ruach. This is also questionable. However, Malchut only had light of Nefesh. Therefore, she cannot receive from that light, but only as surrounding light. She receives as inner light. Why do I say surrounding light? Because it is a higher degree. But she receives internally,
Higher is called surrounding.
Every higher degree, every upper degree in relation to the lower degree is called its surrounding. That's what it says. Meaning, if it's not internality, is called the degree itself. The surrounding refers to the degree above it.
So above it is more internal.
What?
Above it means more internal.
I understand what you're saying. What did I tell you? If the lower one is called Malchut, what's her internality? 4. If the coupling happens over phase 3, then what's in it there? Light of Ruach. Then this is called a higher degree than her. Meaning, this is Malchut, which receives only Nefesh, and here shines Ruach. What's the difficulty? What I said before, I'll explain. At first, what was in Malchut? Nefesh, from the degree of flavors, the degree of Keter. This is called Nefesh of Keter. And what Ruach is there now? Ruach of Chokhmah. So we have to say this is more important. In any case, there's a difference. We'll see that later on. There's a difference between the direct light and the reflected light. We'll see that later on. That's the difficulty you heard. You felt.
I felt that. What is more important, Nefesh of Keter?
This is difficult here, because there's a rule. The Nefesh of the upper degree, Nefesh of Keter, is more important than Keter of Chokhmah. And why does he say here that Malchut, that was before Nefesh, and now there's a coupling of phase 3, a purer degree, that's higher than her, so she cannot attain from there except the surrounding. The question is why? Because now it's a lower degree, the degree of Chokhmah. That's what you call Nekudot, dots. So what's that? What does she receive from? Malchut of the degree of the dots? The degree of the flavors departed? That's the question. We'll see later what he interprets. Next. And she had Zeranpin too, as we've learned before, if you remember, Chaya of Ruach. In the expansion of the flavors, we've learned that only Malchut had Nefesh, Yechidah of Nefesh. Since the light of Nefesh went through 5 vessels, then we discern 5 discernments in her. However, the light of Ruach, when it comes to the vessel of Zeranpin, went only through 4 vessels from Keter to Zeranpin. 4 vessels, 4 discernments. He didn't have only the Chaya of Ruach. Now rose by 1 degree, where the coupling was made over phase 3, and the phase of Yechidah from the inner lights was added in him. Now all his 5 inner lights have been completed, the Zeranpin. From this coupling, also the upper degree, Binah, which first had 3 vessels, an inner phase of Chaya was added in Binah, and the inner phase of Neshama was added in Chokhmah. Chokhmah was first only from 2 vessels, Ruach of Chaya, now there's Neshama of Chaya. And what was added in Keter? Nothing. Why? There's no phase 4.
Aleph.
1. What is 1? When Keter disappeared to his origin, as it is written above, the ascent of Malchut to the place of Yesod means that the screen of phase 4, which is the phase of the vessel of Malchut, rose and was refined to phase 3, which is the phase of the vessel of Yesod. Then the upper light, which never stops, coupled with the screen of phase 3, and 10 Sefirot at the level of Chokhmah emerged. When Keter disappeared to his origin, the light of Chokhmah rose to the place of Keter, and Bina to the place of Chokhmah, etc. similarly. Next, 3. And by this ascent to the place of Yesod, light was added in her. 3. For now, Malchut has acquired a 6th vessel from the level of phase 3 through her ascent to Yesod, regarded as an external vessel in relation to phase 4. Phase 4, coarseness is called inner, and external is called external. And the surrounding light of Chaya clothes in her in this an external vessel. 4. Zeranpin also rose a degree, for now he gained a 5th vessel. And since he has a 5th vessel, 5 lights of Naranchai expand in them in completeness. 5. And to Bina, Chaya was added, for she acquired a 4th vessel and has a place for the light of Chaya. 6. Chokhmah of Neshama, for she acquired a 3rd vessel and has a place for the clothing of the light of Neshama of Chaya. Neshama of Chaya. Chaya already has 3 vessels. All of these 3 introductions, where he says in page 247, item 30, it's only with regards to the expansion of Ta'amim, flavors. The expansion of Ta'amim will be in such a way, meaning that the light of Keter has only Nefesh, and the light of Chokhmah has Nefesh Ruach, and light of Neshama has Nefesh Ruach Neshama. And Zeranpin, which is Ruach, has Chaya of Ruach. And the Malchut of Nefesh has Chaychida of Nefesh. We've learned these 3 introductions. Now, we need new introductions. What is there to know here? 1. What is the meaning where he says that the phase 4 departs and we have the light of Chokhmah left? So the Rav says, he asks himself the question and answers. As long as there is still light in some degree, even though he has a smaller degree, it is still considered that there's light in it. Whereas Malchut now has no light. If the refinement of the 4th phase happens, then Malchut has no light. It turns out that Malchut before had Nefesh, which was clothed in 5 vessels. Now she has no phase 4, so this vessel has no light. However, Zeranpin above wasn't yet refined. Even though we need to say that the flavors were refined, all the light departed, but now it shines in phase 3. If it shines in phase 3 now, then he thinks that he has received something more than what he had before. So he says, Zeranpin had Ruach before, don't forget. Now he received another vessel, which is Yechida. Did you hear or not?
No, I didn't hear.
Again. The first order. You heard?
Yes.
There's flavors. Now there's one introduction where he says, if the light departs the Kli, and in the Kli there is a smaller light, then it is discerned that this vessel has light. Turns out, when we now say that the fourth phase was refined, it is only discerned that Malchut has no light. So, from Zeranpin above, which is phase 3, now a coupling was made, and the degree of light emerges, and he has light of Yechida now. That's what he says. Why would he have light of Yechida? Beforehand, he had Ruach, which is Chaya. Now, we should give to them. First, we learned what happened in the vessel of Malchut, Nefesh. And Zeranpin had Ruach. Think about it. Zeranpin was more important than Malchut or not? There was Ruach there, and Malchut had Nefesh. And Neshama is now more important. And Chaya is more important, and Yechida is more important than that. So we see, in terms of the clothing of the light in the vessels, even though we learn that Malchut makes a coupling over phase 4, which is the degree of Keter, who caused the light of the degree of Keter to shine? Only the Malchut. But the Malchut doesn't receive anything but Nefesh. And Zeranpin is higher than her. And he has Ruach. And Bina has Neshama and so forth. Is that clear? Now, when phase 4 departed Malchut, so we should say, in truth, the whole Partzuf of Te'amim departed. There's nothing. So he comes and says, no. Whatever light there is in the vessels, even though the degree is smaller, it is still considered that they have light. But what is he saying? And what makes it difficult? He says, now there's an additional vessel in Zeranpin, meaning in Malchut that rose to the Yesod, called Malchut, rising to phase 3. He has the degree of Chokhmah, and there's an addition of a vessel in Zeranpin, and now she has Yechida of Ruach. This is also very difficult. What Ruach, what Chaya of Ruach did he have from the degree of Keter of flavors? What Yechida does she have now from the degree of Chokhmah? Next. He says that like a vessel was added in Zeranpin, a vessel was also added in Bina. Bina first had Neshama of Te'amim, Neshama of Neshama. Now she has Chaya of Neshama, but from what phase? From Chokhmah. Next, Chokhmah had first only two vessels. It had Nefesh Ruach of Chaya. Now, a vessel was added where she has light of Neshama of Chaya. From what degree? Not from the degree of Keter, only from the degree of Chokhmah. And the vessel of Keter? No. What is not there? The light of Keter should have been in phase 4, but that's not there. Next. Then he says, the light of Ruach, with respect to Nefesh, is called a higher degree. And therefore it is considered a surrounding light. Same question here. Then his nefesh was from Keter, and his ruach is from Chokhmah. Same order, let's go forward. After that, phase 3 was refined, and Malchut rose to Bina, to phase 2. The vessel was added to whom? To Bina. What did Bina had at first? Neshama of Keter and Chaya of Neshama from the degree of Chokhmah. Now it received the Yechida of Neshama from the degree of Bina. You're asleep. And Zeranpin Malchut, Zeranpin couldn't receive from Bina, which is Neshama, besides surrounding. Even though I say that Zeranpin is the Ruach, it had Chaya of Ruach from the degree of Te'amim, and Yechida of Ruach from the degree of Chokhmah, and Neshama. Now, from the Yechida of Neshama, of degree of Bina, it's higher than her. Why is he Neshama? And if it is Neshama, what is Yechida of Neshama? From the degree of Bina. And Zeranpin is considered Ruach from the degree of Chokhmah. And he doesn't take that into account yet. Why? It's difficult and it doesn't relate to that. He says that he receives one surrounding light. Who's Zeranpin? Malchut, which is Nefesh, she has to receive from Zeranpin. We've learned she receives one surrounding, Chaya. She receives from Bina, that's higher than her, 2 degrees higher. There's more surrounding, there's Yechida, so 2 surroundings. Let's go forward. He learns that when phase 2 was refined to phase 1, the degree of Chokhmah, the coarseness of Chokhmah, now, what is he talking about? The degree of Neshama is no longer in the degree. The degree of Chaya is no longer in the degree. The degree of Keter is no longer there. So what degree is there? Zeranpin. Turns out that now, when Malchut rose to Zeranpin, to the degree of Chokhmah, to coarseness of Chokhmah, she has the degree of Zeranpin. So, Bina, what does Bina receive? Nothing. Bina already departed when Zeranpin shines. So who else is on the degree? Only the degree of Zeranpin. We said those that Zeranpin receives from the degree coarseness of Chokhmah, which is Chaya, another surrounding light. And Malchut cannot receive more surrounding light from Chokhmah, which is Chaya, because phase 1, he says, the observation of Ak doesn't expand below at a rate where she can receive light of Chaya, Malchut. So only Zeranpin receives. Turns out that he received